All right, welcome everybody to the Herbs podcast. This podcast is with guest Jesse Wolf Hardin, and we'll be discussing rewilding plant connection. Jesse has written hundreds of published articles and over a dozen books, including the co-founder of Plant Healer magazine. His subjects entertain the readers on topics as diverse as healing, herbalism, deep ecology, natural history, homesteading, and some of my favorites, enchantment, the shimmer, and portals. Jesse formed the Good Medicine Confluence, which is still happening to this day. And his biography is a podcast in of itself with his decades of involvement with environmental groups, herbal and animist groups, among other things. So this is going to be a short introduction to all of his skills and experience, but I'm confident that when we're finished with this podcast, you'll have a sense of Jesse's worldview, skill set, and enriching storytelling capabilities. So welcome to the podcast, Jesse.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Erin.
Yeah, like I said, let's get into rewilding plant connection. And before I even tell people why I love this topic, I'd like them to know what rewilding is. So why don't you tell us, since you're quoted as being the originator of the term rewilding?
At least the first have been using it publicly. Most recently, rewilding is defined as the removal of human beings and human cultures from wilderness areas for their protection, which certainly has some great benefits to the ecosystem. So if there are some intact areas that are acting naturally, that are still actually in the process of evolving and not just under human control and human supervision for human needs. Originally, however, it was much more than that. It was not only rewilding the land, but rewilding the ecosystem of the South, which meant to heal ourselves naturally, to get in touch with our authentic inner beings, to not be held down and suppressed by conventions or by other people's expectations, to respond to our instincts, to be a sensual creature, interacting with a real wild living world, to be what we were as children, which was undomesticated, willing to believe in a dream and then take great risks in order to live that dream. So rewilding, as far as I'm concerned still, and what it always meant from the beginning, was a complete wilding, a return to original nature for ourselves and for the world, which we're an inseparable part of.
You know, my first idea about rewilding was, it sounds like it's the removal of humans so that other things can be wild. However, we are part of the wild, we are part of nature. So that's an interesting dynamic too. So if things are going to return to being wild, I think that humans have to be rewilded, if that's a word, because in order to interact with nature, we have to remember where our place is
exactly
in that, because if we introduce ourselves back into the wild, we'll just continue to do what modern society and dare I say what European imperialism has done for so long, which is not take the environment and nature into consideration.
Yes, indeed. Well, modern European anyway.
Yeah,
as you
exactly.
well know, ancient European, as well as all ancient cultures, knew that all power comes from place, that spirit is embodied in place, that it's not something separate from us from another planetary system, that it comes through the living planet, through our experience of it. And then if we trash our ecosystems, if we don't show respect to the ancient ones, which are four-legged and furred and winged, as well as our ancestors, our two-legged hominid ancestors, but if we don't constantly take them into account and take into account the impacts on the future, then we turn into this disembodied, unnatural creature, which there makes it possible for us to destroy our planet and make it uninhabitable for ourselves. So really, sense of place to become native again is a concept that we will either come to as a group or we will pay a huge consequence for. The future lies in what we see in the representations of what they discount as tribalism, as primitivism, as childlike behavior. But really, it's the children It's the people that are place-based, that are maintaining cultures of respect, of belonging and relationship that hold the key, not just to the survivability of humans, which I don't believe is the most important thing, but it makes possible joy, balance, a healthy planet, the ecstasy of what it means to be alive.
Yeah, and that's what I hear a lot of in your writings. I'm currently reading The Enchanted Healer. And there's some other excerpts, things that I've been reading too. And that's the thing that really comes clear to me, is how we need to bring that joy back into our lives, be embodied, get reacquainted with the shimmering, as you call it, and the shimmer, and to be in awe of what is around us again. But in order to do that, you have to be back in your body.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think Kiva wrote about this in the Enchanted Healer, about how to do that, like how to get back in your body. And one thing she mentioned is stop going to your head, literally go to like your stomach and try to and just try to be there in that part of your body. So yeah, the Enchanted Healer to me is like it's a storytelling. It's kind of a how-to guidebook of to be rewild and to be embodied. So I'm enjoying that quite a bit.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, you have so many things to be read out there too. What is spirit? Embodied in place, being embodied. And I've been working with this concept quite a bit in my herbal practice, and working with the archetypes of the healer, the priestess, and witch. And what I've noticed in herbalism when I first started decades ago, self-study, and then, I went through Rosemary's program and local herbalist Gigi Staffney. What I noticed that something was a bit amiss for me when I was going through my herbal studies and plant studies was it felt like it was always out there. Like it was something to put on a shelf and something to order and something to grow and something to take and something to harvest. But then I was like, but I'm not embodying it. Like, what does it really feel to be the enchanted healer, to be the herbal healer? What is that? And so I think rewilding herbalism and plant connection really gets to that.
It's the best hope we have, certainly for herbalism, and perhaps one of the best hopes we have for humankind is that we return to our sensate bodies. We return to the sense of oneness that's, whether you're a spiritual person or not, I don't know how to talk about it except in terms of a relationship so intense, so transportive, so revealing that it puts us in touch with the numinous and takes us to the borderlands, which is what magicians, seers, witches have forever done, is go to the edges, go to the hedges, and then beyond, go to the dark forest, to the unknown, find the parts of yourself that exist in the dreamland of this earth, because we are the earth dreaming of herself. To return herbalism to its roots is part of the mission of Plant Healer, which is to say, not just to recreate the traditional folk recipes, but to maintain the original spirit of what it meant to be contacted by a plant, to not anthropomorphize and project upon a plant what we want to hear, but rather to actually silence ourselves and our ego and our particular needs long enough to take in what is the essence of this plant. What are the energetics, to smell it, to feel it, to not just automatically rip it up by its roots, but to meet it as equals, not more than equals, to meet it as an extension, just as our hand is an extension of our body, this plant is an extension. And what fascinates me about herbalists, and I mean core herbalists, it isn't the fact that they might have letters after their name indicating their professional status. That can be useful. It isn't that they are super well known. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. It's that they serve this principle as well as their communities, that they serve the plants themselves. They're not just taking information that's standard and generic, but they're connecting with the plant, they're experimenting with it, they're going through the process of organoleptics, in which you use all of your physical senses to try to find out what are the energetics of the plant, what actions are possible. They're experimenting, and they're willing to do it in a kitchen sink, in a back room. They're not requiring this status or all this equipment or to spend all this money or to be even well known about it. It starts with that moment of absolute connection with the physical processes, to where making the medicine becomes not only a practical, pragmatic chore, it becomes as ecstatic as it is to make the most wonderful foods if you like to cook, or to make love if you like to make love to the person you care about. It's being that engaged with the process of what it is to be an herbalist, a plant person, a plant healer, and to be serving the plants as well as the people. That's a magnificent coming home. And from that home herbalism, you can then build a business, start an educational school, hand out medicines. But it all begins with that magical connection. So the best herbalists are, even if they have infinite amounts of schooling, 30, 40 years of schooling, and education and apprenticeship and all of this stuff, massive clinical experience, the wonder of it is the wonder itself. It's wonderful the way they're on the ground on the knees, digging up the roots, the way they're touching and contacting, making sure that they're not decreasing the amount of plants in a particular area, listening to the song of the earth in the midst of it, absolutely delighted as they mix different plants together to make the perfect tonic, the perfect balm, the perfect medicine for each and every person.
Yeah, that there's so much that you said in there. It's so good. I mean, it's like when I read your writings, I feel like sometimes I have to stop, because I feel like I've just eaten the most delicious chocolate candy bar, and I'm just like, oh, I'm so satisfied, because there was just so much richness in there. So let me just pull out a nugget of what you just said there, because there was so many things. One of the things that I have been doing this past summer, I kind of stepped away from my business a little bit and gave myself some openness to get back with the plants. And one of the things I did is I made a PlayStation like I would have done when I was a kid. And I thought, if I was a kid who loved to just make like little corners of kitchens and, make my little house and stuff, and I love to play with plants and things like that, what would I do in this yard? And it took me a while to figure out, like, where would I put my little house? And I was like, oh, that bush over there, that's what I would do. And what would I have brought over there? And so I created this little playhouse with just like literally boxes and a few toys I found from my kids. And then I sat there and I thought, no, what would I do here? And then I just really got into it. And my son got into it too. And he was just like, this is really cool. And we started to play in there. And the reason why I wanted to do that is to get back to, and I didn't have a name for it at that time, but rewilding my plant connection, my herbal connection, because it can get so caught up in, I have to make a PDF, to give to somebody, and I have to do another podcast and all these kinds of things. And it's been amazing to reconnect like that. And to also, I taught some people about this, and they were just like, this is the coolest thing ever. I'm thinking to myself, it's literally like some boxes and any little nugget of toy you can find, and go play and just let yourself be in wonder, and not to worry about what's going to go in your mouth and what's safe and what's not safe. Just play with them. Just play with them. And so that wonder, I think people in herbalism, we have a tendency to get wrapped up in the analytical part of it, and to teach somebody to unwind that and get back to the enchantment of it. That's kind of been my work with people, is to get back to the plants, let them tell you. And they're just like, I don't know what that means.
Yeah. Well, and even the research and science, which is the balance to that can be just as treated in the same way, with that childlike excitement, with the curiosity, the curiosa that draws us constantly to new information, new experimentation. The worst thing we can do really isn't to overstudy or to go too far in the way of just treating it as a delight and alone, and not paying any attention to the botany or the actions or the actual chemicals involved, the way the different plants work together. So both of those can be problematic taken too far. But most dangerous of all is really not an extreme. Once again, it's not an intensity. It's that middle ground where people read a couple of basic herbals, say, yes, this plant is used for this particular thing. Don't go beyond that. Don't say, does this plant work as well if you have a hot liver or a cold liver? Depending on the constitution of you or your client, that everything is constantly adaptable and changing. So if we just take this basic generic information, and I mean the most simplest, almost tropes about certain herbs, and then go and buy it off of the shelf in some large store, that's the worst thing that can possibly happen herbally. And we may get some benefit out of it, but more than likely we're getting old herbs that lost most of their power, stuffed into capsules by some major corporation that doesn't give a shit about you or your health, that has no idea about the plant or about the spirit or its sourcing, or the people that had to work hard to harvest them and process them in other lesser fortunate countries. And that to me is the worst possible thing. We can't be too excited about the science. We can't be too excited about the play. We can bring those intensities together to reawaken in ourselves a role that has us being the healer. If you only know one plant, as Michael Moore, the now deceased herbalist, taught us, if you only know one plant and know it well, and have experimented with it and seen its uses and understand what it gives, then you have something to teach. You have something to share with somebody else with a similar condition. You can share the experience of the plant and the potential benefits. And that makes each and every one of us potentially a healer extraordinaire.
Absolutely. I think the same thing. And I always think, wouldn't it be really cool if every community knew the person who was really expert at those 5 herbs, and then that one is expert at those 5 herbs, or very connected. What about the person who already has a heart condition and they know about all the herbs that deal with that heart condition? Sometimes I think maybe I shouldn't teach people what herbs are for the heart, because I don't have a heart condition and I don't use those herbs that often, so there's all these ways that I think that we can rewild the herbal wisdom and herbalism. There's so many different ways to think about it, like you said, not just in the which thing can I go take off the shelf, okay, now I'm done. Yeah, that doesn't feel, there's no magic in that. And what I mean by magic is what you pointed to, which is somebody grew that and they were given a good life, and then somebody made it into something and they had a good, joyful time doing it, and the person who's now putting it in your hands has a really enchanted life, and everybody is just really happy and fulfilled and connected. That's the magic.
Absolutely. And in terms of the practical sense, the way that we honor the rewilded state of herbalism is by our sourcing, by our personal interactions. In our wildcrafting, we make sure we're not depleting an ecosystem. We study how endangered it is, not only overall, but in the particular area where we're gathering. When we're sourcing, we sometimes go to a large company like Mountain Rose, but when we do, it's only because Mountain Rose's ethics in terms of their sourcing, the small growers that they're helping support to grow particular plants that may be endangered, but that are certainly helpful to our health. And so we'll go there, but we also go to all the little people that we met along the way that we put into our herbal suppliers guide that we hand out for free. For example, people that have like a farm and all they do is grow herb plants in the backyard, maybe it's not a large commercial organization, but it's helping support the people that are most in touch with the plants and with the planet, and feeding their survival as they feed our health and our joy.
Yeah, definitely. I heard what you said about Mountain Rose herbs. It's not, bigger is not, I don't want to give the message that bigger is bad, or smaller is the best, but they can all coexist at the same time, because not all of us can be a retail supplier like Mountain Rose herbs. Some of us are just are beautiful growers, and some of us are beautiful makers. And we need a connection of community to support each other's.
Well, it's the approach and the standards and the ethics and really the code. If our code is to respect plants, respect the gifts that they give to them, and we put that ahead of profit, then even if we're a large company, we're still doing it for the right reasons. More often it is the small companies, of course, that do that. So the large companies that are ethical are the exceptions, but they do exist, especially in herbalism, because herbalism, as you've seen again and again, brings the best out of people.
Yeah, it does. And I have also seen some companies start doing things with herbs like essential oils and telling people to do things with essential oils that are harmful.
Yes.
And so I wonder, with all of your experience in the herbal realm and the plant healers and all that, do you see any kind of new trends or ongoing trends that are good or concerning to you in your kind of overall view of things happening?
Well, probably nothing as potentially individually harmful as misuse of essential oils. I would say one of the biggest trends right now is what I was talking about in terms of people taking a generic bit of information, putting it on TikTok or whatever, without any real understanding of what it does or the different ways in which it's used, when it's appropriate to use it and when it isn't. That's extremely harmful. And to imagine, I mean, the rest of it isn't so much a trend as it is the bad habit of us thinking that we don't qualify, that we don't have time to have even a potted plant, a potted medicinal herb in our kitchen, that we don't have time to build a garden in the backyard, that we wouldn't be good enough or we couldn't count on our information well enough to even give a neighbor advice, that we may not be qualified to take care of our children or our loved ones, but this isn't true. It's so essential that we don't imagine that herbalism is some rarefied position, nor is it just a cute trend, a language, to add to how cool somebody is. It is very much so taking on of a role, to whatever extent you do, where you're taking responsibility for the health of somebody else, the health, you're contributing to the health of somebody else in a responsible way. And that means that each and every one of us finds what is our ultimate gift. What ways can we best fulfill that? For some of us, it'll be as medicine makers. For some of us, it will be giving advice or teaching. For some, it'll be growing, or some mix more often of all of those. But it's what makes us most effective in this process, and not how official we are, not how much we can claim in terms of our education, not how many books we can even claim we've read. And it isn't even how many case histories that we have of people we've proven we've helped. It's as important as experience is. It is taking on the responsibility of giving, of helping to heal people on a planet that are so in need of it. Until we are in balance with our bodies and in balance with our planet, then there's immense amounts of work. And it's the greatest work that's ever been done. It is, if anything else, a calling. And if you hear that calling, you are worthy of it. You are worthy of doing. You are equipped and will be ever more equipped to do that. Do it in the most magical, personal way possible, the way that expresses who you are, that gives the most that you can possibly give to a world that needs you.
That's beautiful. And I would agree, the bad habit of thinking you're not worthy, you don't know enough, you don't have enough time, you don't have enough energy, you don't have enough money, because I think lack of a better word, we've been assimilated to think that only people with a certain degree or a certain amount of money or whatever it is can only do these things. And that will only, if we believe that, that will only keep us at the same state that we're in right now. And the state we're in is not the most healthy as humans on this earth, I think. So yeah, that's a really good point.
It's a call to magic. Magic is action. It's not a concept. It's not a calendar on the wall. It's not a pagan song. Magic is changing reality, affecting reality, impacting it, hopefully in a positive way. And to do that through every part of our being possible, through every skill we have, every concept that we can come up with, to connect these things like a weaving itself, one thread to another, to all these other ideas, all these other processes, to connect botany to medicine, to connect medicine to spirituality, and spirituality to the trees that are the original elders of this world.
Yeah, the keepers of wisdom that are there without mouths and eyes and ears, they're already there. Is there any little nugget of advice you could give to somebody who doubts their ability to be able to hear or interact or communicate with plants? Anything that you could tell them to get started with, to bring back, to get out of the old habit and get back into empowerment, that they can definitely learn this technique, this skill, this art?
Well, listening to what plants are telling us is listening to what the world is telling us. I mean, the concept of Gaia, of a living earth, which is self-regulating and self-aware, that has a collective consciousness that's not only feeding off of us as nerve receptors, as nerve endings, as microphones to the planet, as cameras of this planet, but seeing through the bacteria and their wisdom and what they bring to the table after 4.5 billion years of evolution. It is drawing from all these different things to create a new mythos that is predicated not on the accumulation of a grimoire of knowledge, but rather it's predicated upon actively affecting, whether it's affecting the health of somebody, their psychological well-being, their loneliness, affecting the world. I mean, it's as simple as, can we gather the plants that are needed for our well-being without hurting them? Do we know which way is north, east, west, and south, so that we're actually on the planet we're in? You know, are we hearing the wind, or just the whipping around of thoughts in our minds? Are we actually touching and connecting the world that we're a part of? So my suggestion as rewilders is, first of all, that we set aside everything that's in the way. That means your self-doubt, your programming, what you were told you were meant to be or had to be, and it wasn't true. The expectations of your parents and of a society that expects you to be, oh, so cool, oh, so perfect looking, with such a high income. Set aside even things you've read about herbalism in terms of this is only used for this, that, or the other thing. Basically, it's a process of letting go. It sounds awful Eastern for somebody with so many ideas, but for a moment, let all of that go so that it's predicated just on the one thing that matters most, which is your connection to a truth, and a truth that can then affect the world around you, starting with the people, starting with yourself, actually, then the plants that you're dealing with and the people around you, and then perhaps the body politic and this ever more errant culture that we're a part of, for better or for worse. So letting those things go. So when we walk into the forest, or we walk into a garden, or even we pull fresh plants out of, fresh flowers out of a baggie, at that moment, it's set aside the thoughts, set aside your preconditioning, set aside all your assumptions. What are you smelling? What does your body feel? How does this make you feel just to be in the presence of this plant? And taste it, sit in your mouth for a little while. What flavors are you getting? But also, what subtle effects are you having as it soaks up through your saliva glands underneath your tongue and is drawn almost immediately into your bloodstream? sit with a plant before, that's growing outside in a wild state, and come to know it not only as an individual plant, but as a part of an ecosystem, knowing that it's as much connected to the trees as it is, and to us as it is to others of its own species, that through the roots and through this mycorrhizal fungal filament reaching out into the very roots of the trees and drawing from the wisdom of this collective whole. That is what we're doing here, really. It isn't finding a plant that will say to us, as if in a excellent psilocybin experience, here, take me, take my life. I'm the perfect thing for this condition you have right now. Sometimes you will find the perfect plant at the perfect moment, but don't narrow it down that much. Let those kinds of concepts and preconceptions and projections aside. What is the entire earthen whole, the inspirited magical whole, speaking to you through this plant in this moment? How silent can you be to hear it? How open can your heart be to feel it? And then to take that with you. That's where this experimentation comes from, because then all the things that you believe were the insights of the moment, that you believe were from something bigger than just your narrow human self, take those and try applying them. See how this works in the moment for that condition, in that person, and take it from there.
Yeah, that is an excellent description, the how to and the being with, because as you mentioned, you can experience the plant, sit with it, I always say, go find it where it lives, go find it. You don't have to bring it in your house, you don't have to bring it in your garden. Go find it and sit in its own home and listen to it and just observe what's around you and what happens, and let the feelings and the thoughts and the emotions come, and don't judge them, just take note of them, and then see later what arises in your life after that, or the next time you come sit with it. Like, the synchronicities will start to unfold if you can at least allow it to come in and hit your presence.
Absolutely. Well said.
Yeah. So, gosh, I wish I could really just take people and let them feel what I feel when I'm with a plant. But I can't. And that's where I kind of came up with the term plant priestess, because one day I thought, can I just give people what I feel inside? It's this thing here right in my hands. Because people would always say, how do you memorize all these plants, even in grad school? How do you memorize all these plants? And I was just like, I don't know, but I really did know. I literally would see these names pop in my head, and I felt like if I could give it to somebody, it would be this. And the term plant priestess just popped up in my head, and I was like, oh boy, priestess, here we go. That's kind of a loaded term, but I allowed it to unfold anyway. So it will, once you allow these energies and vibrations into your life of the plants, just let it be. Just let it be as it is.
Absolutely. Very well put. We're talking about, with rewilding, we're not talking about becoming something other than what we are. We're talking about letting enough of the bullshit go to truly be who we are in the moment, in our purpose, in our dreams. And we have a million reasons to feel bad on this planet today. I mean, we could go down the news cycle items for even today, and have a million reasons to be depressed and to give up, to become nihilistic, have no hope, and to imagine that meaning doesn't any longer exist. But now is when the meaning means the most, when there's a precipice of potential failure of the entire human race, and even the principles are the actual biota, the systems that keep the planet alive today. All of that is in danger. I mean, between climate change, between the potential for nuclear war. But what is that? That's not taking us out of it. That's adding the exclamation mark to the purpose. It's not a reason not to study this and to become natural healers. It's a reason for doing it. It's a reason for taking on the responsibilities for what it means to be a priestess, which is, I think, to be a conduit for something that is a gift to the world, not to be this higher person that lords over or has authority over, but rather to set aside so much of yourself in order to open up and become this portal, this opening, this magical opening in the forest itself, in which people can enter with you and come back out also more authentic, more purposeful, more purposed, more delighted.
Yeah. When, I've been through moments in my life where it just feels like so much darkness, like you said, there's just a litany. And the one thing that the message that keeps coming back and back is resonate with the things you love. Don't continue to put your energy towards that which is draining your energy. So for me, I just need a leaf. I just need a little bit of earth to smell. And it's that simple and it's that potent at the same time.
Yes, I mean, I see the value of wild places in the natural world. I feel that so deeply after 50 years now, almost as of next year, in this particular remote, difficult as hell sanctuary that we live on in the wilderness here. And there's no way that we can be in a world of gardens even and have all the insights and the connections that are necessary to be as the true human that we can be. We require wildness, require places that are not yet impacted by us, even in the best of ways. So we haven't destroyed it like the clear cutters do when they cut all the trees down or turn everything into pavement cities. But we also can't just turn it into our playgrounds. We can't just, have sculpt it into order to look like our magical Disneyland. It is crucial to be these places that can evolve apart from human direction and supervision, and that retain the original spirit of the natural world that we're trying to connect within ourselves and outside of that. On the other hand, because most people do not live in the wilderness, in fact, if everybody did suddenly listen to us here and say, well, I need to move out into the country right now, there wouldn't be any countryside left. There's so many humans on the planet now that the fact that there's any wilderness left is the result of the fact that we aren't there as a civilized species, and that the humans that are there are living close to the land, drawing resources from the land and giving back to the land. But also, because there's so much urbanization, because it's important that we don't give up our communities and just all move out, it's important, and I understand that even as wild as I live, that we have to find the wildness in other ways in our towns. So that can be parks. As foolish as that sounds, even if none of the plants there were planted there are indigenous, in other words, from the region, from the state, the fact is that others move in, and almost every weedy species, or the majority of the weedy species, are indigenous wildlings, outlaws that are returning back in spite of all of the poisons that are sprayed on them and the mowers that have mowed them down. To go to these places, to find somewhere underneath the hedge, underneath the bushes, away from the crowds, to connect to the actual, like you said, the scent of the soil itself. And if it means taking it into the house, though, if a potted plant, for example, is the most natural thing you have in your house, aside from human scent and the food in the refrigerator, then that can also be a magical conduit, needs to be a magical conduit to take you closer. Soil is there, even if it's only a few inches worth. The roots are there telling us that we need to be rooted in the land in order to thrive. We can't live up here and up there. It's blossoming, reminding us that we too can grow and blossom and become better, and dare I say, more beautiful, that we can enjoy life as fully, as ecstatically as that plant obviously is.
Absolutely. It goes back to, it doesn't have to be a big thing in order to be a potent connection to, like you said, to the wildness around. And every bush, every outlaw, as you call it, I love that, outlaw for weeds. It's all part of things that we need around us. So yeah. Well, this has been So good. I don't want to end this podcast, but we probably should do that at some point to end this episode. But please take some time right now and let people know where they can get a hold of you in terms of your writings, events that you do, anything, any way people can work with you. This is your time to share that.
Well, thank you. Well, Plant Healer is a combination of myself and my wife, Kiva Rose Thorne. She's a credible, unboxable creature, a witchling, an oddling, an otherling, and a foxling, as we call her, since foxes are medicine animal. But the two of us have, from our different paths, come to a sense of Plant Healer as a way to reconnect to not just plants and what the effects they have, not just as a means of getting away from pharmaceuticals and having healthier health treatments for ourselves and our loved ones, but rather as a way to rewild ourselves, to reconnect, to grab the filaments that we were talking about, and thereby reconnect to the roots of the rest of the living world. So for us, it is a magical effort. It is a seership. It is a educational process that is fed by ecstasy and sensuality as much as it is by pragmatic needs for information. So we do it with events, which is our annual event, the Good Medicine Confluence. This year, it will once again be somewhere in the Southwest. We're looking for the perfect place right now. Tickets are already available on our planthealer.org website. But this will be our 13th year of gathering what we like to think of as the misfits, the people who come to herbalism through all these bizarre, incredible, impassioned ways. Nobody's there because they're just business persons or it was what worked out for them for any particular reason. They're there because they have this overriding, overwhelming emotional and spiritual calling. And they're so unusual. I mean, we have everything from nerdy scientists to little old ladies that are making medicine in their houses. We have the young people that have blessedly rejected the dominant paradigm and are looking for a new way. We have a wide variety of voices from youth to elders teaching over 100 classes that are about topics, not that we said you have to teach to be an herbalist, but the topics that most move you. So we're talking about alchemy. We're talking about human sexuality and intimacy and how that affects it. We're talking about how health involves nutrition, how the joy of making our foods and doing these workshops where we put our fingers actually into the food and have these wonderful food making experiences are part of it. So all these artists and, boundary pushers and culture shifters, radicals, back to the landers, homeschoolers, amazing people who are not the norm. They're not the normies, they're not the normative. They're not that understood perhaps where they come from. Outside of their own families, they may not have the benefit of a community that really can see them for who they are. So once a year, they come together on the umbrella of good medicine to this confluence of spirits and beings to where everybody feels free and empowered to be themselves, who they really are, to live their dream, to make connections and network in ways that benefit their purposes throughout the entire year. So they have a community, even if the other members can be hundreds of thousands of miles apart. The other way we do it is with publications. We began with Plant Healer magazine, which we now call Plant Healer Quarterly. That's 4 ebooks per year, over 200 to 250 pages. Some people say, haven't stopped, that's too much information, with massive amounts of illustration and artwork from all over the world, from all time, in order to express and connect a aesthetic of herbalism that involves the lore as well as the science, the artwork as well as the constituents. So medicine making is involved in it, clinician, how to treat each other, but also what does this plant mean to me? How does it support rural communities? What did these ancient or existing indigenous cultures, how did they use it to their benefit? What are the ethics of herbalism? How can we grow the plant? All of these things come together in this amalgam of people who have two things in common besides, or maybe three: big hearts, the love for plants, and belief that our purpose on the planet is to give and to enjoy giving. So Plant Healer Magazine is a paid subscription, but we also have Herbarium Monthly. Herbarium Monthly we produce on top of all the rest of it, and it is just the two of us here in the wilds, somehow managing to raise our toddler and take care of the chopping the wood without a caretaker that wants to live this wild, live this far from society. Somehow managed to keep that going and do these publications as well. But Herbaria is essential. It's one of the ones we can't drop because each and every one of you can go to our website and sign up for it. And every single month you'll get 80 to 100 pages of this herbal information, this call to connection to nature, this encouragement of who you are, what your purpose, dreams, and gifts are each and every month as our gift to you. Some of the people that we met that are the most wonderful have been because of their focus on helping others, their focus on the natural world, their focus on spirituality, they're making the least money. We want to have something for them that will give to them without anything being charged on a regular basis so they can remain connected to this weft and warp, this weaving of Plant Healer, this weaving of what it means to be able to give. The Plant Healer bookstore, also available through our website, is an online collection of 13 years of books, compilation articles from the quarterly, and also new writings by us, such as The Enchanted Healer you talked about so sweetly, in fact, are available through the bookstore. And we ourselves are available. Kiva's on, and my daughter Inga, wonderful daughter Inga, another wildling, she's on Instagram. Kiva's on Instagram. They're both on Facebook and can be reached through us there. And we're here for you. We might be living as far as we can get from society, from civilization, from convenience. It may be a long ways to come to meet you, but we're here for you. We're always available.
Yeah, your amount that you put into the free thing and the quarterly is astounding. And I think of you often when I'm reading, think of you and Kiva and think, how in the heck do they put this thing together so quickly? And, you know, I know that you're probably growing food or harvesting food and chopping, and, you know, it's just incredible, because what the thing I haven't mentioned, and you mentioned it very briefly, is that these publications are in beautiful color with your artwork on there and other people's artwork. It's really something, like you said something about it. I can't remember exactly the word you have, but it's a sensation. There's like, it's not only information, but it's like a sensation. Like when I'm reading it, I just feel like I'm wrapped up in the colors and the imagery, and definitely feel like I'm in the weave, like you said, of this community that you've put together so well. And I'm also impressed at the dedication and the length of time that you've both been at this, and at really affordable prices with all these publications that you so graciously give to people.
Well, you are a kindred spirit for sure.
Well, thank you so much. And I'm honored that you came to the podcast, and I hope to have you again, because I feel like we could chat for hours on any one of these many subjects. So thanks again for coming.
It's been a real pleasure. Sincerely mean that. I very much have enjoyed it. Thank you, Erin.